What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Shoenn with Jude, episode 5, part 2, Mind the Gap. Did you get it yet? Have you figured it out? Gap in knowledge, gap in the mind, knowledge. We're talking about the mind, we're talking about the equine brain. Um, I don't know. I come up with this stuff on the treadmill. I do a lot of stuff on the treadmill. Does anybody else? I get a lot accomplished on the treadmill. So, anyway, we're back with Dr. Maria Katamani, who owns and operates Mythos Farm in Pennington, New Jersey, Ringo's, New Jersey, western part of the state. Also, a clinical psychologist in New York, licensed in New York and New Jersey, and a professor at Rutgers, Robert Wood Johnson, Rutgers Department of Psychiatry. So, Maria is back talking about behavior, talking about learning theory. I had taken a course at the University of Edinburgh talking about equine behavior and welfare and how training, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, pressure and release, and sometimes these things have negative connotations. In fact, I felt we were discussing some things in the course where they're like, well, we're trying to steer away from that because it was negative. Maria really explains out the realities of these different learning theories, and they're just because they have the word negative in them, they're not necessarily negative. So that was interesting. Talks again about behavioral science, learning theory. Um, and then we get down the road that I think for me as a farrier, I think other farriers, other trainers, other horse owners, is managing clients, managing expectations, and sort of this line that we live on where, I know for myself, I'm out here wanting to do a good job, wanting to give clients everything that I can to them, and then seemingly, if things aren't going well, it gets very personal, And unfortunately, I know for myself, there have been times where I just don't know why it needs to go there. So Maria talks about that. I ask her some very convoluted questions, trying to touch upon how do you deal with that? How do you navigate that type of stuff? So super interesting interview. Again, please, like and subscribe if you like the content. I hope you're enjoying the content. Every month on the 15th and 30th, I'm going to try to bring you some novel content, hooves, horses, and horsepower. So, interviewing different people within the industry, bringing their experience to the forefront, their knowledge to the forefront, and I hope you enjoy it. And I appreciate you stopping by, and I hope you enjoy the second part of this interview because I really enjoyed doing it. So, thanks again, and thanks as always for tuning in. Chewing with you. See you next time. I'm going to use the example of like a horse holding the leg up for a farrier. My experience has been certain things can be unlearned over time, but we'll just take that as an example, right? So there's a horse that has an issue, whether it's putting the foot on the foot stand, whether it's how the farrier holds the leg. Um, and again, I recognize that it's wholly dependent on each horse and the degree of how bad the issue may or may not be. How long would you say, and like, what would your process be? And it's a long winded question, so I apologize. So I know, like, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, pressure and release. What are some of the techniques, like using that example? How would you go about trying to unlearn those issues, or can they be unlearned in your experience?
Yes, they absolutely can unlearn. Here's one of the biggest problems I see in the industry, Jude. And maybe because psychology, by the way, is not a hard science. We call it behavioral sciences. So it's not like physics and chemistry, but it's a science. It's just a behavioral science. And one of the things that in psychology, you spend most of your doctorate learning about learning theory, like behavior analysis, like C plus E S2 R1, all those like mathematical algorithms of how species learn, and statistics. Those are the two things. People think you're sitting there dilly dallying and just talking and hearing and free associating, but you're actually, it's heavy science stuff. Learning theory is the core of understanding behavior, and it's a free for all in the equestrian world. I can't. It's so frustrating to me to read in a national paper the misuse of negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, terms like this arbitrarily, that I have to sometimes reach out and write to the editor and say, can you retract this? You're misleading people, and these terms are thrown out. For example, negative reinforcement. People say, oh, I never use that negative reinforcement. I only do positive reinforcement. Well, but that's impossible. I mean, mammals learn with negative and positive reinforcement. The term negative is not that it's a bad thing, it just means taking away something to increase behavior. Positive reinforcement is adding something to increase behavior. Punishment is decreasing behavior. So a reinforcer increases, a punisher decreases. So once you understand, it's like driving stick shift. Once you
Mm-hmm.
understand the the terms, then you will appreciate that, for example, negative reinforcement, pressure and release is an example of that. Natural horsemanship would be an example of that. Is a necessary part of how mammals learn. We learn that way too. So is positive reinforcement. Good girl, good boy, here's a treat
Mm-hmm.
to increase behavior. That's also part of the equation. And in fact, a great trainer will include both. Somebody who understands these principles will include both. Will give the release, will give the reward timed correctly. That's why you pay someone who's a professional to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because an amateur will do it 3 seconds behind or give it arbitrarily a treat. You don't see me giving treats arbitrarily here. You don't
Mm-hmm.
see me dropping GB, boy, good girl, unless that means something, because that's an example of positive reinforcement. So can that be trained to help a horse not uh, throw their leg around? Absolutely. And it could be a combination of touching and releasing. I can include when they're good to give them a treat. Both.
Yeah. How long would you say again? And I know again, is it a 3 month thing? Is it a 2 session thing? Is it 6 months? Is it never? Like, how long would you, in your experience, based on a lot of training, a lot of different horses, generally, how long would it take for a horse to unlearn a certain behavior?
Yeah.
Generally.
So Jude, this is where in the horse world we kind of, that 30-day training blows my mind. So the horse, as I see it, has just like a person. When as a clinician somebody comes in and I don't know what's going on for you, I do like a clinical evaluation. I ask questions about your family, past, your past relationships, health history. Each horse has that profile too. I'd want to find out as much as I can about who trained them, how they were handled. If I'm lucky, I'd want to know who their mother is. What kind of mother did they have? What did
Mm.
that look like for them as a foal? How were they started? Any traumatic events, any early injuries in the past where they had to deal with someone giving them medication or applying some wrap around them? What did that look like for them? Because all that's going to influence the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, I could get the job done in a clinic, and I tell people that, like, I could get the job done. The question is, you want to speak to that horse's profile, because the non-professional is going to have to be doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know, for example, that a horse, that has a difficult time lifting their leg is because they tied his head to his tail and he was stuck like that for 3 years, you can have a very different compassion point for that animal as he's thrashing around not understanding it. If he's had concussions, which is, by the way, a very underrated um, thing in the horse world, like we do not give it enough credence in the human world, let alone the horses. The 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 way the brain rewires after a concussion, can affect the way the horse absorbs information.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're trying to teach it something and see it's just not getting it. So all these add to the profile. So I try to do upfront work before I start working with a horse to get a better sense of what created this,
Mm-hmm.
down to things like have they had any head injuries, have they been transported in the last few months. I might go in a barn and I look at, the height of the thing. Were they in the trailer? Could they have bumped their head? Are they acting a little bit? And I'll do some tests that I've developed with another actually ophthalmologist to test and see if how the horse's reaction time to thing is, because that's going to inform me how I'm going to put myself also in a dangerous situation.
Mm.
But it guides me about how long this might take for the horse to understand this. He might do it for me, but will he understand it is a completely different thing. Just like sight and vision are two different things. I might get him to do it for me, but does he understand to do it for everyone? That's what the profile allows me to, to gathering that information is priceless.
Mm-hmm. So this, and again, we talked about this on the phone leading up to the interview today, and I thought it was
Cool.
very, very interesting. And then not trying to be controversial, but one of the things that I've found really difficult in my own practice is navigating the clients, right? And you're in business and you're a professional in business. I think other farriers that I've talked to over the years, that's a big issue, is sort of this disconnect. And I know people, or it's often said, people with small animals, people with large animal, there becomes sort of this attachment that exists, and then we're here as service providers trying to provide a service. Is there any advice that you could give as a trained licensed psychologist to other professionals out there, or even owners, clients that are going to be watching this video? Like, what's the best way to sort of manage expectations for people with horses from both sides? And I'm like dancing around sort of the question a little bit. I've found in my practice people are very difficult to deal with, and their expectations at times are unreasonable. My example I'll give is, if I advise a client that I'm going to be at a particular location at such and such a time, I do everything that I say, then I find myself on the other side of the country and they're calling me the next day to come and do a horse. That to me is just unrealistic and poor planning on their part. But at the same time, I'm trying to give good service and also not lose a client. You get kind of the example, like, how do you manage? Like, do you find today things are more difficult? Are they about the same since you started practicing? What's your thought on that?
It's different for different. It's different for me for different clients. Like as I've gotten older, I used to be when I was a little younger. I have to admit I was a little bit of a more of a hothead, I would say. Uh, my way or the highway. Um, I was, but as I've gotten older, I've gotten a lot more appreciative of the loyalty that people have shown me over the years, despite the, I suppose, the maybe the aggressiveness from the horse world and people, the division that can happen. People know, why are you with her? You could be with me. So I'm much more forgiving of people that have shown me that. I have found that it's easier to sit down and talk with someone. I could lower my voice a notch. I could kind of see it from their perspective. I said, you know how I am. You know that, my knee-jerk reaction, Mary, is to tell you no, but I want to hear, what, why is this important for you right now? And let's figure this out. So, to be honest, I'm not comfortable with that. You want to put your horse in this competition tomorrow when he colicked yesterday.
Mm.
Like, let's just sit down for a second. Let's just work this through. So, I might just sit down with them for a little bit. I've learned that, by the way, um, even though I'm a psychologist, in the horse world, I've not been that way. People are surprised and shocked when I'm not like sitting and processing things. I'm not that person. I was a researcher, essentially. But my clients have shown me to be a little bit more, just take a breath, because it's a little older. Just if I'm about to say something, just walk away. Just say,
Mm.
let me think on, I'll say something like, instead of reacting or answering somebody immediately, I'll say something like, let me get back to you on that. Let me think about that. Let me get back to you on that. Or I need to go now for a few minutes. Let me just come back and just grab a water and I'll be back. Because I know that if I have an emotional reaction, nothing good will come of it. And that's how you lose people, by the way. That you don't lose people because you disagree. You lose people because they they experience you in a certain way, and then now you're angry. Now you're emoting on them. So to have an emotion is fine. I can do that separate. I have to feel and acknowledge it to begin with, and then distance myself for a little bit, emote, and then return back in a little bit more calm way, because professionally, that's what people expect of me. Now, this is a very impassioned field. We're in this because it's our passion. So, of course, you're going to have feelings. Of course, you're going to have very, very definite direction about things. But we're also in business. So if it was just my passion, it would be a hobby.
Mm.
But this is a business. So I have to be able to regulate my emotions, appreciate the other person's position, and find a very, very compassionate way of advocating for the horse.
Hmm.
So that for me is primary key. Sometimes people will say, well, I want to do this. It's your horse. You can do whatever you want with it. But recognize if you do, this is going to rupture something here.
Mm.
So go do what you want to do. But we need to work on this afterwards because I'm not okay with that.
Right.
So those are the kind of, I just found, Jude, over the years that I'm Greek. I can have a temper. I've learned to just walk away, and things like I need to think about this. I can't answer you right now. Give me a day. Has been that saved me from a lot of relationships,
Yeah.
both personal and professional.
Using the colic example and the person wanting to show the next day, and you advising them it's probably not in the horse's best interest. And if they're just belaboring the particular point, again, trying to manage that. Is it manageable with certain people? I mean, I know I'm like treading on like it can that person be brought to recognize like, yeah, it's probably not in the horse's best interest to take it to the show. You know what I mean? Like
I think I got what you.
without losing the client, because we know like, okay, horse people, some horse people, not all, I won't paint with a broad brush, they may just say, well, I'm taking the horse, and if that means I got to leave your barn, that's fine.
So the and now I get your question. It's all right. I'm in. I'm in. It took me a while,
No,
processing
no,
through.
it's not an easy question.
So I have two adages that have saved me, my heart and soul in this arena. Otherwise, I'd be devastating for me, because you put your heart and soul in them. I hear them in a very particular way, so it bothers me. Whenever a horse leaves me, I worry. Let's
Mm.
just put it that way. So, but there's two adages that have saved me. One is, now it's, you see, like I'm having a senior moment. Yeah, that your vibe attracts your tribe. So typically, in general, the people that are lifers for me, that stay with me, they're vibrating. They're vibrating along the lines of me. They might not be 100%, but they want that, and
Mm.
so it's, they might do things outside of it, and I might just kind of like a sheep herder bring them back and say, hey, we don't do it like that. We don't pull on them. Like, here's a different way, and they'll say, oh, interesting. I never saw that. I'm curious. I want to learn. So generally, my vibe attracts my tribe. So doing things like putting myself out there, like, and you know how this is for me, social media, being on video is very difficult, but I work on it. Certainly putting books out, any kind of literature, is going to, some people are going to read it or see me, hear me, and my voice, my face, my what I'm saying, what they're reading of me is going to just, they're not ready for it. They're going to say, not for me. And then some people are going to look at this or me and say, wow, interesting lady, curious. kind of like her energy,
Mm.
and they're going to vibrate towards me. So there's that group. But the second adage that has saved me is accepting that sometimes people come for a reason, a season, or lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
So not everybody that comes to me is for a lifetime. I wish they were. I
Mm.
wish I could help everyone. But some people, they're not vibrating on the same timeline. They're not in alignment with. But they came here for me to solve a suspensory issue, or they wanted that jumper to be sold as a dressage horse, or they're or whatever it is, that person is there for me to solve a problem, and then off they go, and I have to be okay with that. I
Mm-hmm.
have to recognize that. So I once I know who that person is, I'll address them accordingly. I won't give 100% of myself, my teachings, my knowledge, my everything, to somebody who's here for a season or reason,
Mm.
but I will for someone who's coming in for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And part of my job is to figure out what they are, because I'll be more at peace when I can accept that they're not going to be on board with everything. But I'll know, okay, well, let me just make sure I can get this horse okay in this timeline. It always goes back to, I get that you want to ride, but let's solve this problem first. And in Greek, we say, then you could go wherever the hell you want to go. But that's how it's helped me spare myself a little bit and have a little bit of compassion for where they are. Because, Jude, a great experiment that I do in my clinics, go to YouTube and type 432 hertz, which is supposed to be the frequency of nature,
Mm.
right? You're sitting down, you put 432 hertz. This drum here is 432 hertz. It's what they resonate with. I can have two, three different people listening to it. One person will say they're relaxed. The other person say it stresses them out. The other person says, I'm going to sleep. I can't even focus on what we're talking about. So that's energy.
Mm.
So the person that I'm talking about being present, being mindful, getting connected with the horse, hearing the horse, learning to hear the horse, they're like, quack, 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 quack. It's not resonating. They're not ready for it. It could
Mm.
be they weren't heard as a kid. They just want to get on and go. They have a lot of aggressive energy.
Mm.
They're not allowing themselves to feel, to be in that place of feel. That's none of my business. My business is, why are they here for a reason, a season, a lifetime? I solve the problem, and the door is always open for them if they decide to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
But that's helped me not get so, I guess, um, attached or disappointed when they're not on board 100%. I
Yeah.
have people in my barn now who've not even read any of my books.
Okay. You segueing, perfect segue. You've written a number of books. Could you tell us, like, give us the titles and then brief synopsis of what each book is about, and maybe where people could find them if they're interested?
Well, both books, Jude, are on Amazon. They're also Trafalgar Square Publishing. My last one is Golden Horse Press. The My first book, I co-author with Dominique Barbier, who's a classical dressage trainer based in California, and we co-authored this book. And in it, it really was basically two trainers who know that this exists with horses, maybe with training in this lightness. So we just wanted to quantify what that means. So
Mm.
it's not just this like flu word that we use. So when we got together, like, it's interesting, like, why don't people believe this? Why don't people trust this? Why is it so difficult to get people on board? And it was like, well, maybe if they just saw there's science behind it, they will understand that it exists. So if it exists, then it's achievable. And that was the first book. And in it, I worked very hard to draw in all the science around vagus nerve function, why we dissociate, the heart body connection, heart rate variability is something that now people are talking about as if it's everybody's talking about it. We were writing about this, talking about it 12, 15 years ago. So that was the first book. It was really kind of an invitation, a general book for the masses to say, we know this exists with horses because we know it exists with people. Here are experiments that are being done with people, with horses, and so it exists. So go out there, experiment, know it exists. Maybe that'll help change the way you train and ride.
Mm-hmm.
The second book, the follow-up book, is Writing in Dignity. That one I wrote myself, and that one is more of my personal journey. So I include things that have helped me personally evolve as a trainer in it, but it's more of a philosophical paradigm. What has helped me? What has served me in helping thousands of people and horses in this? What's made it survivable? What things from the past have I opted to move forward into the modern world? So it's like a summary book of a philosophy that across disciplines, across breed, whether you're Western racing, jumping, you'll have to take something away from that, and it
Mm.
was meant to be written that way. It's not a to do, but the philosophy sets you up to figure out what your to do is, because we all have, as long as you understand, that's the truth. As long as you understand learning theory and you have a philosophy, those are two basics I don't find in the horse world for 80% of trainers.
Mm.
It's disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
I find it in service providers, like my dentist understands this, my farriers understand this, but a lot of the riders don't. A lot of my amateur riders don't. A lot of the trainers, that amateur trainers, like young trainers, don't have that. So they should have that, and that's what I write about in the
Okay,
book.
cool. Two or three books?
Well, technically three, but my dissertation doesn't count because
Ah,
it's outside of the horse world.
okay,
But
gotcha,
yes,
gotcha.
it's three. I've written three books. I've published over now 40 peer-reviewed journals.
Wow.
I've been on five major article chapters I've written. So that's from my university world.
Yeah, yeah. Have you done any horse behavioral research or like,
So I did with Dr. Evelyn Henge years back, peripherally. We started to align on some paperwork, but it's mostly been with dolphin trainers actually
oh, okay.
that consulted with me on heart rate variability and the heart rate, and analyzing heart rate variability, and then the cognitive part for
Mm-hmm.
dolphins, but
Yeah.
not with horses. The What I have done though is the Heart Math Institute, Roland McCrady's group, they've done research specific to horses. I've not been involved directly with them, but I'm plugged in. I get the research as it's coming out from them.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody that's doing any research around horses, especially in the biofeedback world, I'm plugged into them. So
Mm.
in that way, but I've not been an active collaborator research in it, because I these days I'm more of a teaching role in the university, so my hands are out of the research part. I act as a consultant though for a lot of people, both in the animal world and the human world,
Mm-hmm.
for things like sports psychology and heart rate variability biofeedback.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've also gotten into like equipment manufacturing, if I could say that, like saddles and saddle pad. What's a reason like for that outside of like a business? Is there an issue that you found with saddles? Like, why did you sort of go down that road?
So the saddles, over the years, I aligned myself with different saddle groups. So I got to know very well the industry with saddles. I was a rep for, I won't name them, but a couple
Mm.
of people over the years, and they always fell short for me. But it wasn't until, about just before COVID, I started getting, it's almost like I get a wave of paint horses, or a wave of draft horses, like the barn will fill just with draft. I started getting a wave of people that had had either Lyme disease or concussions from riding accidents, car accidents.
Mm.
And I started to see that as they would ride, they were walking as they were riding. So I started getting very deep into, I actually got certified for the something called visual motor physiology. And I work with a doctor, and he has a certification for physicians. So I went through that program with him and aligned with him, because I started to realize that the way people were walking was this, those asymmetries were coming into their riding.
Mm.
So most people that come to me, they're amateurs, maybe 50 plus, and they just want the last decades of their life to just have fun and sit on a horse and do it right and do it well. And dressage was always a mystery, like, oh, but it's not a mystery. So I felt like, let me decode this. And part of decoding dressage and making it easier for people, and also for horses, because the impact of people's asymmetry, I was finding more and more in the horses, was how can I get them to look the part? And so I developed a saddle that's not just comfortable for the horse. We tested it. It's a very particular design to allow for shoulder freedom, but the tree is not compromised. It's a really, really, it took me 10 years to
Mm-hmm.
do this. And but also the pitch of the saddle speaking specific to people's asymmetries, because those things are not going to disappear overnight, nor are they going to go and work with a posture person that would take them 5 years to work on. But I found a way to assess it and then help people with that combination of an equicizer, posture chaps that I developed with a fellow that worked with NASA that was aligned with when I was at Robert Wood working on research with aviation medicine. So I pulled together a couple of people that were geniuses in what they were doing with posture to, to develop a posture chaps and a saddle that spoke to your specific asymmetries, so that when you sit on the horse, you're relatively balanced and you're working to rewire this what they call motor track between your eyeball and the occipital part of your brain. So when the way we walk Jude through space is that's why they say vision and sight are two different things. You can see something, but vision is how you move through space. We might see something, but how it's experienced in our body is very different. So I developed this assessment to see where people are, and then we calibrate the saddle accordingly. And that I couldn't find anywhere else.
Right.
I don't think anybody's really talking about it in that same way, particularly because we're on the East Coast. I see a lot of Lyme people that had Lyme or do have Lyme, and I see it impacts the horses. And I have a program to rehabilitate horses who have had Lyme disease too, because this particular track from the eyeball to the brain is impacted. So their due north, the way their straightness is affected, the way they load on their hooves is impacted by this. So we have a program for the horses for that, but we have a program for people for that. So it doesn't become, put your left shoulder back, put this leg here. Well, they can't. I mean, they think they're straight. So then you're just barking up a slew of commands when the person is completely feels comfortable. This feels straight to him.
Right.
So because that seemed like it was showing up over and over, I felt that was like kind of from a cue from God, like, Maria, do something, like figures this out. So that's where that started from. I was getting so many people, and the lessons were sounding like that's not how it's supposed to sound like. And it was people that were, in the mid 60s, 70s. They just want to do right by the horse. They're really trying, and they really can't help themselves. This is years of unresolved concussion injuries, Lyme disease, also a slew of just physical issues that they have that are affecting their balance. So that's how all that came about.
Nice. Cool.
I just wanted to solve a problem. There was a problem in the field, and there was no solution to it. So I just wanted to be that.
Nice.
Yeah.